Good morning, kind rising stars. Are you ready for Gregor the Overlander? We are already on chapter 20. There are only 7 more chapters to go, and we get to the end of the book and find out what happens. Things are getting very interesting, aren't they? They just flew away from the grown-ups. They flew away from Vicus, and they flew away from Sullivet and Merritt. And it's just the kids now, ready to go on their journey. Do you remember they met that rat, and the rat was going to go with them? Oh my gosh. So many interesting things. And this whole section is called The Rat. So let's see what happens. We're reading Gregor the Overlander by Suzanne Collins. Chapter 20. It was just the 9 of them then. Gregor felt like all the grown-ups had gone home and left the kids with a rat for a babysitter. Inside, he felt sick and hollow and very young. He looked around the group and realized there was no one he could turn to for protection. "We may as well get some rest," said Rip Red with a big yawn. "Start fresh in a few hours." He brushed some cheese crumbs off his fur, curled up in a ball, and was snoring loudly within a minute. No one else knew what to say. Gregor spread his blanket on the floor and called Boots over. "Go bye-bye?" asked Boots, pointing in the direction Vicus had departed. They went bye-bye, Boots. "We're going to sleep here. Betty bye time." He lay down on the blanket and she curled up with him without protest. Temp and Tick positioned themselves on either side of them. Were they standing guard? Did they really think there was anything they could do if Rip Red decided to attack them? Still, it was comforting to have them there. Luxa refused to lie down. Aurora came and wrapped her golden wings around her. Ares pressed his black furry back against Aurora's, and Henry lay at his feet. They could take whatever precautions they wanted to, but Gregor felt sure Rip Red could kill all 8 of them in a flash. "He'll take out Henry and Luxa first, since they're the only 2 with weapons, and then just pick off the rest of us one by one," thought Gregor. Maybe Ares or Aura could escape, but the rest of them were sitting ducks. That was the truth. He might as well accept it. Oddly enough, once he did accept it, Gregor felt more relaxed. He didn't have any choice but to trust Rip Red. If he could trust Rip Red, then he could go to sleep. So he let himself drift off, trying to push the images of striped spider legs and jagged rat teeth from his brain. What a rotten day it had been. He awoke with a start to a loud slapping sound. He instinctively crouched over Boots until he realized it was just Rip Red smacking his tail against the ground. Come on, he growled. "Time to get moving. Feed yourselves and let's go." Gregor crawled out from under his blanket and waited for Marith to get the food. Then he remembered. Marith was gone. "How do you want to handle this food thing?" he asked Henry. "Luxa and I do not serve food. We are royalty," said Henry haughtily. "Yeah, well, I'm the warrior and Boots is a princess, and you 2 are going to get pretty hungry if you're waiting for me to serve you," said Gregor. He was way over this royalty thing. Rip Red laughed. "Tell him, boy. Tell him your country fought a war so you wouldn't have to answer to no kings and queens." Gregor looked at Rip Red in surprise. "How do you know that?" "Oh, I know a great many things about the Overland that our friends here do not. I have spent much time there among your books and papers," said Rip Red. "You can read?" asked Gregor. "Most rats read. Our frustration is we cannot hold a pen to write. Now move over, Overlander. Eat, don't eat, but let's go," ordered Rip Red. Gregor went to the packs of food to check out the supplies. It was mostly smoked meat, bread, and those sweet potato things. He guessed they might have had enough food for 3 days, if they were careful. Of course, Rip Red ate like a pig, and he would probably expect them to feed him. Okay, maybe 2 days. Luxa came over and sat awkwardly at his side. "What?" Gregor said. "How do we make the food?" she asked. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Henry and I, We have never actually prepared food, admitted Luxa. Gregor could see Henry scowling at Luxa, but she did not look at him. You mean you never even made yourself a sandwich? Asked Gregor. He couldn't cook much, but if his mom had to work late, he'd make dinner sometimes. Just stuff like scrambled eggs or macaroni and cheese, but he could get by. A sandwich? Is this a dish named in honor of Bartholomew of Sandwich? She asked, puzzled. Gregor said, I don't really know. It's just 2 slices of bread with meat or cheese or peanut butter or something in between. I have not made a sandwich, said Luxa. It's not hard. Here, slice off some pieces of meat, not too thick, he said, handing her a knife. Gregor sawed away at the bread, managing to get 18 slices out of 1 loaf. Luxa did a pretty good job with the meat, but then she was used to holding blades. He showed her how to assemble the sandwiches, and she seemed somewhat pleased with her accomplishment. She took 4 for herself, her cousin, and the bats. Gregor took the other 5. It would be asking too much of her to serve Rip Bread and the roaches. He roused Boots, and she started right in on her sandwich. Temp and Tick gave polite nods of thanks for theirs. Then Gregor approached Rip Bread, who was leaning sulkily in the tunnel. He held out a sandwich. Here, he said. For me? Said Rip Bread with exaggerated surprise. How very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the rest of your party would be happy to see me starve. If you starve, I'll never find my dad, said Gregor. Quite true, said Rip Bread, popping the entire sandwich in his mouth. It's good we have this understanding. Mutual need is a strong bond, stronger than friendship, stronger than love. Do rats love? Said Gregor dryly. Oh, yes, said Rip Bread with a smirk. We love ourselves very much. Figures, thought Gregor. He went and sat with Boots, who was polishing off her sandwich. More, said Boots, pointing at Gregor's uneaten sandwich. He was ravenous, but he couldn't let her go hungry. He started to break his sandwich in half when Temp delicately pushed his sandwich in front of Boots. The princess may eat mine, said Temp. You need to eat too, Temp, objected Gregor. Not much, said Temp. Tick will share her food with me. Her food? So Tick must be a girl roach. He will share with me, said Tick. And Temp was a guy. Not that it made any difference to Gregor. It was just one more way he could avoid insulting the bugs. Since Boots had already munched halfway through Temp's sandwich, Gregor accepted. He tried to give them part of his food at the next meal. Breakfast was finished in 2 minutes, and they packed up. They were starting to mount Aries and Aurora when Rip Bread stopped them. Don't bother. You cannot fly where we go, he said, and indicated the tunnel. It was barely 6 feet high and only a few feet wide. We're going in there? Isn't there another way to get to my dad? Asked Gregor. He didn't want to head into the dark, narrow space with Rip Bread, even if they had mutual need. There is another way, but not a better way, unless you know one, said Rip Bread. Gregor could feel Aries and Aurora twitching in distress. What about the bats? I'm sure you'll work that out, drawled Rip Bread. Can you walk? Gregor asked Aries. Not long. Not far, said Aries. Then we'll have to carry you, said Gregor. Ride you, flyers, ride you? Asked Temp. Flyers do not ride crawlers, said Aurora edgily. Why not? They rode on you, said Gregor. He was tired of everybody being snooty to the roaches. They never complained, and they pulled their weight, and they looked after Boots. All in all, the bugs were the easiest traveling companions. The bats fluttered but didn't answer. Well, I'm not carrying you. I've already got Boots and a pack of pot roasts, and Luxa and Henry can't carry you both. So if you're too good to ride on the crawlers, I guess you'd better ask Rip Bread for a lift. Do not use that tone with them, snapped Luxa. They do not sneer at the crawlers. It is the smallness of the tunnel. Flyers do not like a place they cannot spread their wings. Yeah, well, half of us haven't been having much fun flying hundreds of feet in the air either, said Gregor. He realized he was beginning to sound like a jerk. Aries and Aurora had not been mean or impatient when he and the roaches were scared of flying. Look, I know it'll be hard, but I'm sure the whole trip won't be in such small tunnels. Right, Rip Red? Oh, surely not the whole trip, said Rip Red, bored to pieces by the argument. Can we start, please? The war will be over before we decide our travel plans. We will ride with the crawlers, said Aries shortly. Gregor helped Luxa and Henry set the bats on the roaches' back. They had to lie face down and cling to the smooth shells with their claws. Gregor had to admit it looked like an uncomfortable way to travel. He tucked Boots in the backpack and picked up his share of the food. Okay, lead the way, he said to Rip Red. Finally, Rip Red said, and slid into the black hole of the tunnel. Henry followed next, with a torch and drawn sword. Gregor guessed he was trying to give the bats some feeling of protection. They went next, single file on the roaches. Gregor waited for Luxa to enter the tunnel, but she shook her head. No, Overlander, I think it best that I cover our backs. Probably, said Gregor, realizing he didn't have a sword. He went into the tunnel, giving Boots the flashlight to hold. Luxa brought up the rear. It was awful. Cramped and airless, with some foul liquid that smelled like rotten eggs dripping from the ceiling. The bats were stiff with discomfort, but the crawlers seemed at home. Ick, said Boots as a drop of liquid landed on Gregor's hard hat. Icky. Yeah, icky, agreed Gregor. He hoped the tunnel wasn't long. You could go pretty crazy fast in here. He turned back to check on Luxa. She didn't look happy, but she was managing. What means this icky? She asked him. Icky, yucky, gross, nasty, foul, said Gregor. Yes, that describes well the rat's land, said Luxa with a sniff. Hey, Luxa, he said, how come you were surprised when Rip Red showed up? I mean, I don't really know the prophecy, but you do. Didn't you expect a rat? No, I thought one gnawer beside meant a rat would be tracking us, perhaps even chasing us. I never imagined he would be part of the quest, she said. Vicus said we can trust him, said Gregor. Vicus says many things, said Luxa. She sounded so angry that Gregor decided to let the conversation drop. They trudged on for a while in silence. From the periodic splashes on his face, Gregor knew that Boots must be getting wet. He tried to put his hard hat on her, but it kept slipping off. Finally, he dug out some catchcloths and tied them on Boots's head. The last thing they needed was for her to catch a cold. After several dismal hours, everyone was soaked and miserable. Rip Red led them into a small cavern. The smelly water ran down the sides of the place like rain. The bats were so stiff that Henry and Luxa had to lift them off the roaches and help straighten out their wings. Rip Red lifted his nose in the air and took a deep sniff. There, that has done much to conceal your odor, he said with satisfaction. You mean you just took us that way so we'd all smell like rotten eggs? Said Gregor. Quite necessary. As a pack, you are highly repugnant, said Rip Red. Gregor was too worn out to argue. He and Luxa opened up the packs and doled out food. No one felt like talking. Rip Red swallowed his lunch in a gulp and stood in the entrance to the tunnel. They were just finishing up when the bats went tense. Spinners, warned Aurora. Yes, they've been on our trail almost since we started our journey. I cannot smell how many in this place with all the water. What they want, I wonder. Rip Red flicked his tail at Luxa and Henry and gave an order. 3-point arc, you two. Henry and Luxa exchanged a look and didn't move. 3-point arc, and this is no time to test my authority, pups, growled Rip Red, baring his terrible teeth. Henry and Luxa reluctantly took places on either side of Rip Red, but back a few feet. The three formed a small arc between the rest of the party and the tunnel entrance. The bats took positions behind them. Gregor strained his ears, but all he could hear was the water falling. Was there an army of spiders after them? He felt, as usual, unarmed and defenseless. He didn't even have a root beer this time. Everyone became motionless. Gregor could tell that Temp and Tix sensed the invaders now too. Boots solemnly sucked on a cookie, but didn't make a sound. Gregor could see the muscles rippling in anticipation along Rip Red's broad gray back as the spinners approached. He braced himself for a wave of bloodthirsty spiders, but it never came. A large orange spider with a small brown spider on its back staggered in and collapsed on the floor. The brown one was oozing a strange blue liquid. It made a great effort to sit up. Its front legs brushed its chest as it spoke. Vicus sent us. Nars attacked webs. Many spinners lost. We too. We join the quest. And with that, the brown spider fell over, dead. Did you think that was how chapter 20 was going to end? They got the 2 spiders to join them, but then one of them died immediately. I hate the way these chapters end. It makes me want to keep going, but I have to stop. I have things that need to be done today. Oh my goodness, and it's the weekend. I don't even know what to say. It's spring break next week. I don't know if we'll read every day, maybe, but keep watching. We'll read some more of Gregor the Overlander by Suzanne Collins to find out what happens on the quest. Are they going to find his dad? Who's going to die next? Remember, some of them are going to have to die. I'm not sure this was the best story to read. It's also scary. I'll see you next time. Bye.